Trojans Talk Research is a monthly spotlight on the research interests of choice faculty presented by Troy University's Office of Sponsored Programs. This month, Dr. D. Bennett and Dr. Paige Paquette talk about their research on Alabama's literacy mascot, Short the Squirrel.
This morning for our Trojans Talk Research, we are joined by two faculty members from the College of Education. These ladies embody this statement I'm sure you've heard before. Choose a job you love and you'll never work again. Because I'll tell you, they love what they are doing. They form partnerships and pull it all together. Their personalities are authentic, confident, fun, full of energy. So knocking on their doors has to be strategic, and their research comes natural as their organizational skills do as well. We are joined by Dr. D. Bennett, who is an assistant professor in instructional leadership, and by Dr. Paige Paquette, associate professor in teacher education. Partnerships, procedures, and organizational skills for research, they've got it.
Thank you.
Welcome, ladies.
Thank you, Dr. Riley. Thank you, everyone, for joining us today. We are so excited to be here. You can see we are nuts about research. And so we are excited to tell you more about the research that we've been doing and encourage you to do some of your own. I'd like to start out by introducing the short research team to you. So I am an associate professor, as she said, in DTE, and I am also, it's in English language arts. So I'm the English language arts expert on the team. And then we have Dee, who is also in the College of Ed, and she brings a multitude of experience to this whole thing because she's been an elementary teacher, she's been a psychometry, she's been a principal, she's been all, so she brings so much, but she's also the co-founder of Short the Squirrel. And on with us today is Monica Anderson-Young, and she is one of the first global leadership PhD candidates. And so she is still working through that process, but she is also a co-founder of Short the Squirrel. And so then our final member of our research team is the director of the Auburn Truman Center, and he's a community expert, and that's Dr. Jason Bryant. And the really great thing about him, he's a Trojan too. So this is our team, and this is how we've all come together from different places, and we'll talk a little bit more about that. So we have been really excited because we had an opportunity to collaborate not only with our team and the talents that we bring, but also with other schools and that sort of thing. And so we really focused in on this collaborative research. And so as you see here, the definition of collaborative research is research with rather than research on. It's research that arises out of the expressed needs, interests, and questions of the stakeholders who are most invested in the research and its findings. And it is research conducted in relationship with these stakeholders. And as I was reading through the SAGE Encyclopedia of Qualitative Research Methods, that sounds exciting, doesn't it? Lisa Givens, the author, explains more about collaborative research, and we just love these definitions, and we wanted to share them with you. She says collaborative research enables the voice of researchers and those in the field, practitioners, policymakers, and other stakeholders to be positioned alongside one another, not separately, but together, in shared inquiry of mutual interest and benefit. Although it can involve many different types of alliances, common goals and mutuality are integral parts to collaborative research. A sense that each partner has much to learn from the other, and that the results can be richer through collaboration than just with one person doing something on their own. And as we were talking about collaborative research, Monica shared with us, I'm pointing to her like she's up there somewhere. Monica shared with us an interesting perspective. She said, as a practitioner and a doctoral student, she sees the opportunity to engage in collaborative research, and it allows us to conduct real-time research while improving the communities in which we're researching. So we're able to have a positive impact on the community while we are doing the research, and that is really exciting to us. So you'll see here, we wanted to give you a visual of how we see our collaborative research working together. So obviously we have some people from Troy University, that would be us, and that we are working together because as an English language arts professor, I want to know how we can encourage students to love to read and how we can build literacy and how we can make it better. And so then Dee's is more in a leadership and administration area. She's able to see how can we help principals do that for their schools? How can we increase these scores? How can we make them better? So then we brought in Auburn with Jason, and Jason is a community engagement person. He knows how to get out in the community and to work, and he is also our data guy. We don't know that much about data, whichever way you want to say it, but we don't know that much about it as much as he does, so he was very valuable to us. And then we're partnering with Short the Squirrel, and Short, if you haven't met him, he's awesome. You've seen pictures of him. But Short loves to read. There he is right there with his book. And he loves to read. He believes that waiting time is reading time. And so he wants to encourage students and kids of all ages to learn to read and love reading as well. And so then for our particular research we've done here, we brought in 2 East Alabama schools. Now the benefit of the College of Education is that we go to a lot of places, and the educators, the principals, even superintendents are Troy graduates. And that is such a valuable thing for us because they understand who Troy is and what we want to accomplish through the College of Ed. And so both of the principals at these schools are Troy graduates. So that was an easy in. And so then as we went and we talked to them, these are 2 very different schools. One is a Title I school and one is a STEM school. So they're very different, have different types of students. And it was really great when we walked into one of the schools, the principal said, I've been trying to figure out everything I could do to get this squirrel to come to my school. And so she was so excited that we came to her and asked her to participate. And then at the other school, he didn't really know that much about Short, but in a short time, he did realize how exciting it was that the kids loved the mascot. And so he even went out and ordered a mascot for his school because he saw the enthusiasm and excitement that Short brought to the kids. So you can see by this picture, it doesn't take much to realize why we wanted to research literacy and a mascot. But we've all, on the team, the research team, we've all had an opportunity to hang out with Short as he went to schools and be part of his friends and his team. And so we were able to see that there was a lot of excitement. Kids get excited when Short comes in the room. And so we saw all that, but for those of you that have been around Troy for a while, you know that Chancellor Hawkins always says, if it's not documented, it didn't happen. So we needed to document this. And so that's why we decided that it was time to start doing some research on the literacy and the mascot. Dee?
Thank you. How many of you in the room have actually heard of Short the Squirrel? Very few. Okay, so I have the pleasure today of sharing with you who in the world is Short the Squirrel. Where did he come from and what is actually his job? And so to better understand the partnership, we wanted to make sure that you understood who he is and how this came about. Monica, who is on our team's call today, is one of the other co-founders. She happened to come here to Troy for an alumni event, February of 2020. In that overnight stay, the 2 of us actually reconnected, had an opportunity to visit, and actually talked all through the night, catching up after not seeing one another for about 30 years. And that means we're getting old, right? So with that, what do you ask? What have you been doing? Tell me what's been going on. And she began to explain that she loves her job. She was so excited to be back in Alabama, but she didn't want to talk about her job. She wanted to talk about something that had been placed on her heart. Her oldest daughter had just taken a job as an assistant DA. And in her time in the courtroom, saw how many children were waiting without anything to do. The adult that they had come to the courtroom with, whether they were disputing a parking ticket or maybe something a little more traumatic, that adult didn't realize that you could not take electronics into the courtroom. And so the children didn't have something to do. And so McRae began to say to Monica, Mom, this is when they should be reading. Why didn't someone take some books? This would be a great thing to entertain them while they were waiting in the courtroom. So Monica, a true Troy Trojan, a true servant leader, embodied the motto, mind, heart, and action, right? And she said, by golly, I'm going to do something about this. And so she began to elaborate and explain how she was going to produce short sheets, short activity sheets that could be placed in the courtroom to give those children something to do. Well, as Paige mentioned, I was a kindergarten teacher, and I thought, you know what? They're going to need those sheets to be bound together. So have you thought about maybe you could just put them all together in maybe a booklet? She was like, great idea. Well, the more we began to talk about this and what content could be on those activity sheet pages, we said, oh, wait a minute. What if you put an apostrophe S and the short sheets become shorts sheets and they belong to a character? And at the same time, we said, a squirrel. Why? Because a squirrel is everywhere. They're in the country, they're in the city, they're in trees all over, they're running across the quad. And so it would become a character that all children, no matter where they were that they could identify with. So sure as girls or women in the South do, she was backing out of the driveway the next morning, still talking about Short the squirrel, and said, Dee, find us somebody at that university who can draw us a squirrel. So back to networking and partnerships, we worked with the Design Center, Ed Noriega, and he did find us that student who helped us design a squirrel. Where we thought this booklet, when we piloted in 4 counties, where we thought it was going to be a one and done, remember that date, February 2020? What happened in March of 2020? The whole world stopped, right? Which probably was a good thing for Short, because we had 2 very high energy co-founders who were stuck at home and needed something else to do because we weren't out and about like we love to be. So in that time, we had a friend who called and said, okay, I understand your squirrel is trying to entertain children while they're waiting in court, but I just came from the doctor. And do you know where else children are waiting with nothing to do? In the doctor's office, in the urgent care. And so at that time, our initial booklet, which we thought would be one and done, Short in court, morphed into a second booklet, Short Gets Sick. That morphed into a booklet for the bank, Short's Money Tree. That morphed into Short's Feelings. That morphed into Short Recycles. And the list continues to go on and on. We have just actually worked with RC&D for children who are waiting at a dock while their parents are fishing, waiting at a marina while they're launching the boat. Where children are waiting, Short can fill that gap. And excitingly, just partnered with Alabama Power Foundation for Short Tours the Town, because there are numerous places where where children are waiting, and we want to be the space or the activity that fills in that space of waiting time becomes reading time. So now that you've heard about our journey and what 3 years later we have actually become, that maybe helps you make it all make more sense that we're here now trying to recognize and research, does Short make a difference with young children? All of our materials are consumable. We did also have the opportunity to partner with the Daniel Foundation for something a little more permanent. And these are now being used in public schools, in the counselor's office, also being used in urgent care as a more permanent way for children to read while they're waiting for the doctor, waiting to see the principal, waiting for anywhere. And it just actually stays in that space where everything else gets to go with those children. So 2020, that was also a very critical year in the College of Education, because that was when the Alabama Literacy Act was implemented. And that became another piece of research where we were asked as educators to pull in our stakeholders, but then how? How besides just a donation to that school library? And Short could then fill that gap. Short could allow our stakeholders in the community to encourage reading. So we reached out to Governor Ivey's office, again, thanks to a Troy connection, and shared our story just as we did with you. And she said, this is perfect. This is exactly what we're looking for when it comes to stakeholder relationships and bringing everyone to the table to help close that achievement gap. I, as the governor of Alabama, am going to name Short the Squirrel Alabama's reading mascot. Of course, we were elated, so excited, could not believe that we were going to have the privilege of being an Alabama reading mascot. But then it resonated to us, what messages do mascots carry to all of us in this room, right? We want Short's message to be waiting time is reading time. But I'd like for you to take just a second and look right here at these different characters. Now, I see a lot of young students in the room, and you may not recognize some of these characters. But tell me what resonates with you when you see one of these. Anyone? What's that? Wildfires with Smokey the Bear. Still at 50 years old, I do not play with matches because Smokey the Bear told me not to, right? Okay, what about another one? All right, Leanne, you and I may be the only ones that know this guy in the middle. That's right. So this is McGruff. And when we were growing up, when you went to counseling class with your elementary counselor, she had a puppet. And her puppet was McGruff. And it was talking about being safe. Don't steal. If you see something, say something about crime. So McGruff had a loud message for all of us. All right, anyone here, it's great. All right, so what do we want to do every morning? Frosted Flakes or eat breakfast, right? And so these different characters have a message, just like Short the Squirrel. So while we have been in the field, as Paige said, we've been all over the place. We've been working in schools. We've been working in communities. We've had conversations with superintendents, parents, stakeholders, teachers. And we just have captured right here a few things that we call highlights and insights. What continues to prompt us to want to do the project, but more importantly, why do we want to dig deeper in the research? So the first one is, unfortunately, over half of our children in Alabama are reading below grade level. And that's why the Alabama Literacy Act was implemented, and that's why we're really holding our students accountable when it comes to reading, because we want to pull that reading level up. Literacy is the responsibility of all of us, but unfortunately, as we've been in the field, we hear a lot that, oh, it's the parents' responsibility and the teacher's responsibility. Well, it is, but there can be a third leg to that stool, and that is where we in the community can take part of that literacy gap. The third thing, and all of us are sitting on a wonderful college campus, and we know the importance of education. We value education, but we have families that maybe don't understand that literacy is the foundation in everything we do. And that is, again, where Short can help plug in, because we want our Alabamians to be successful, right? And then the last thing there is about mascots. And as we've begun to research mascots, not only what are their captions, what is their message, but ironically, children who are in peculiar or precarious situations actually hear that message louder than students who are in a more successful and traditional home. So we thought, oh goodness, we've got to keep going. We've got to keep working with Short so that message is loud and clear. So all of Short's story brings us to this very reason we're here today, and that is to talk about research. And when we, as a collective team in collaborative research, began to explore, what do we want to know? What do we want to ask? Here are our two research questions. The first one is, to what extent do children who engage with Short the Squirrel materials display motivation for reading? Now, I want to clarify, all that you just saw when I was Vanna White here and showing you all these different things, those are in the community. We do use the opportunity to go into schools and community events with our 6-foot mascot named Short to help bring excitement to those children. So what you see here is actually a school visit. We've done an assembly, a story time, a variety of visits. So that helps us in identifying To what extent do children that engage with short, do they have that motivation to read? The second question, to what extent does Short the Squirrel foster excitement for literacy engagement? After they hear Short's message, are they more apt to pick up a book and read versus something else? So those were our two research questions that we took forward, and we used a survey that actually a second grader can complete independently, not needing interaction with the teacher or a parent. This survey is modified from the Wong-Baker FACES scale. You may be familiar with that when you've been to an urgent care or a doctor's office and they say, rate your pain, and they're all the different faces. So in this case, we modified that to rate reading. Do you love to read so much? Do you like to read a lot? Do you like to read sometimes, or do you not like reading at all? The research project itself, as Paige mentioned, is happening in two schools, both in the same school district. Both schools have a wonderful relationship with Troy University. We have interns in those schools. We have teachers who've graduated from Troy in those schools, and then those partnerships are just key to the success of the project. One's a Title I school, one school is a STEM school, very different populations of students. They are all second graders. So our focus group was in second grade mainly because when we met with those administrators, that was their request. They felt like that was a good target grade. The students were independent enough that they could do the surveys without a lot of prompting or coaching from the teachers. And then we needed 3 points of data. The first point of data was a baseline. They had never heard of Short the Squirrel, or if they had, it had not been at their school. So we wanted to know, how do you feel about reading before you ever met Short? That was collected in November. And then we went back in January. Half of the second grade classes in the building came to an assembly, and they met Short in person, or like we like to say, in Squirrel. And they actually were in that assembly, had the story time, and then went back to their classroom and completed the survey. The other half of the second grade didn't come to the assembly, and that particular day, they just took the survey again. And so that was our second data collection point. The third data collection point is Short hosts an annual birthday party every February. It's a virtual engagement where children all over the state can actually participate in a day of reading. And so the entire school did the virtual birthday party in both of these spaces, and then the second graders took that survey again. So we had 3 data collection points. Now, in fairness, it's not on the slide, but in fairness, I do want you to know that we are educators, and our heartstrings were very much pulled over the fact that half the second grade never got to see Short the Squirrel in Squirrel, right?
Teachers were not happy that
they were not happy. So we, after we got all of our data collected, we went back to those schools and we did an assembly. And then those second graders who didn't get to meet Short the first time, they got a little extra attention because he went in their classrooms in a smaller environment. So all of this to say, all the data has been collected. We are now in that data analysis section of the research project, and we are preparing for publications and to actually give the outcomes of what happened during this research project. But during the process, we internally learned some key points. We are not finished exactly with our data analysis, and we are leaning heavily on Jason Bryant. So we're going to get into what is the rest of the story. But when Paige was talking about collaborative research, and we all come together with different talents, as different team members, she shared with you that great statement from Chancellor Hawkins: if it's not documented, it didn't happen. And so Paige is a key player as a veteran professor here at Troy, that you're always watching for opportunities for research and opportunities to document what you're doing in your field, whether it's in the College of Education or anywhere you are. As an early childhood educator and a co-founder of Short the Squirrel, I come to the team with a different lens. Monica is in corporate America, and she is a facilitator of corporate communications and a co-founder of Short the Squirrel. She comes with a different lens. And then, of course, you've heard us brag about Jason Bryant and his many talents. So why do Dee and Monica want to research literacy and a mascot? It's because of this young man right here. And so I am going to take a time out and just tell you a brief story about this little guy. And I call him this little guy because we don't even know his name. But we were called right after that first birthday launch, and the teachers had used Short's virtual birthday party in their classroom. We're 1 year out from the pandemic. And we were asked to go to Uniontown, Alabama. Do any of you know where that is? It is in the middle of nowhere, and it is an extremely rural community. And we had a lady who was over kind of like a boys and girls club. It's called the Choice Resource Center. She called us and she said, I'm going to have an outdoor book fair and I would like for Short to come. And of course, Monica and I said, we're on our way, let's go. So we met each other with Short in Uniontown. And she had a wonderful display of different books by grade level. She had different organizations in Uniontown come and make cotton candy, hot dogs, different crafts that the children could do at the book fair. So Short was walking around, making his way around, introducing, encouraging children to pick up books from the different table. And out of nowhere, this little guy came running at a full sprint, grabbed Short around the belly as hard as he could. We kind of thought our squirrel might be going down. And he looks up at Short, rubbing his belly like this, and in his precious little preschool language said, I'm trying to weed every night because you told me to. Of course, we're crying and we're saying, oh my gosh, it's making a difference. And that's the moment when we thought, if we can just continue to share Short's message across the state of Alabama, what a difference this squirrel can make to children just like this little guy. So why do I want to be a part of this research team? It is so that we continue to spread the love of literacy. And we have the data to take to the State Department, to take to the Alabama Reading Initiative, to take to our decision makers in Montgomery, that when we have a voice through a mascot, we are making a difference. So I mentioned just a second ago before the story that we internally have learned a lot through this process of research. We're not quite finished yet, but that doesn't mean we haven't gained a lot of knowledge about strategies and procedures. And so what we'd like to do today as the second half of our presentation is just explain some of the things through collaborative research that we have actually learned. And that will come through the partnerships, the procedures, and best practices.
So I know a lot of you have a goal, right? You're ready to graduate, those of you that are in the room, and you think that's it. I will have reached my point. And so I work in Phoenix City at that campus, and we work with adults. And so I've really learned a lot about being a lifelong learner. And so as we share this information with you, I want you to know we didn't know all this going into this research project. We didn't know everything, and so we're continuing to learn, and that's really what research is about. It's just learning and growing and then using it to make a difference. And so whatever your job is, whatever your career is, there are going to be opportunities. It may not be research in the point of what you're seeing here, but you're going to have opportunities to, even on just a simple level, to say, okay, why is this not working well? Or why is this working so well? And how can we take this and use it and replicate it in other areas? So that's why I'm so excited to see you all here, because research is a part of everyday life. We are learning every day. So I don't want to break your hearts and tell you that you're going to still need to learn after you get out of college, but we're doing it all the time. And so these are the things, some of the things that we've learned just from doing this research. And so first thing we really looked at, we saw the quality of partnerships and how that is so important, and the talents of the team that we bring together. And it's like Dee said, Monica comes from the corporate world. Well, Dee and I need a little corporate in our lives because we don't look at things that way. Jason has had a multitude of experiences, but what he's really brought to our group is this community engagement piece and bringing in people and how do you get people involved from the community. So the talents of the team, this is Reva Skirtman. He is in Ozark. He's the superintendent from Ozark, a Troy graduate. And so he brings his enthusiasm to the team and when, if we go to help them do something in that school system. So everybody, the talents that everybody has, everyone can play a different role, and that's what brings it all together and makes it successful. So having successful engagement with these agencies in these schools. And so it's important that we have these great partnerships. And like I said, I almost feel like we're cheating sometimes because we do have so many Troy graduates that it just kind of makes a natural engagement. But we can all agree, most of the agencies we've talked to, most of the schools we've been to, they all want to see kids love to read. They all want to see kids be able to use their imaginations to go places, just like Short the Squirrel does. So we need to have that successful engagement with those agencies. And we've learned we have to be mindful of timing and funding. We have not really considered like all the different testing. We were talking about earlier that now it seems like students are testing all the time. When I taught, we tested once a year maybe. But now, so we had to be very aware when we were doing our research. Dee talked about the 3 times we were gathering the data. We had to be aware of, okay, if we start then, when's their testing? Because we can't run into their testing. So you have to make sure you're aware of the timing of the partnership to make sure everything works. And then the funding is really important because even within this situation, we had one school that said, hey, can I get this book? Can I get this book? Can we buy this book for our kids? We want them to have all of these things. And so then the other school just didn't have the same funding. So, when you consider going to different places and just like Uniontown, places like that don't have the same funding, you have to look at the budget. You have to figure out how can you make this so that all the students are benefited by it. So we talked about here detailed procedures. So do you guys know what IRB? I don't see anybody saying yes. But when we do research, the IRB protects the people that are involved in the research to make sure that nothing bad happens. So we have to fill out an IRB application and get permission to do the research. And so you can imagine, so this is on an academic level, a higher education academic level. So you can imagine what the language needs to sound like in the IRB. Well, that doesn't translate into teacher talk in second grade classrooms. So you have to be very aware of the language that translates from something that you're turning in higher education academia and something that you're giving a second grade teacher or a parent who only reads on an 8th grade level. So when we filled out, created letters to go home to the parents and that sort of thing, we had to make sure that they were on a 7th to 8th grade level so that we knew that the parents could have a better chance of understanding what they were agreeing to when we got permission. So that was a procedure that we learned a lot about in the process. And effective communication with the agencies and schools goes right along with that. But we also learned that you can send letters to teachers. You can have meetings with teachers. You can sit down and say, this is what we want you to do. They're so busy. Their plates are so full that they still miss things and forget things. And so just like we all do, but so we had to learn, we've learned a lot about what we need to do to communicate with them, to help them be successful in what we want them to do. They just want to help us because they want to help the kids. So we need to communicate better in that way. And then the last one is the consistency with the data collection. Again, like I said, we can give the directions multiple ways, but we need to be more consistent in helping them do the best that they can with this data collection. We need to not wait till the very, end, we've learned, and we should go different times. So you learn these lessons, and that just makes it better the next time. And then the organizational practices. It's hard when you have a 6-foot squirrel hanging out with you and seeing kids get so excited. It's hard to stay focused on what your why is, what your purpose is, staying focused on those research questions. Because you can, as Dee was pulling up all these books, anytime we get in a car to go anywhere, we're going, oh, Short should do this. Oh, Short should do this. And so even in the research, we walk into the to the school and we're like, oh, maybe Short can do this, maybe Short. You have to stay focused, because it's so easy to look ahead. It's so easy to veer off in a different direction. So you have to stay focused on what your questions are at that time, and then there'll be an opportunity later if you want to come back and ask those other questions. And remembering why we're doing it. Like I said, we get so excited when the kids get so excited, but then we have had to put on a different academic hat in some situations and say, okay, we're researchers now. We're trying to look at this from a professional research standpoint and not just two former teachers that get so excited to see kids loving to read. And so we also need to learn from the results to help all the organizations involved. Our research is not just for us. As Dee has shared, we need to have it to give the governor. We need to have it to help the schools. So it's to remember that we are doing something that is mutually beneficial, just like the definition of collaborative research says, for everybody, and that we do better when we're doing it together than when we're trying to figure these things out on our own.
So when 4 different entities came together as a research team, as a collaborative group of professionals, we never dreamed that we would be making such a difference. But then this project would help us become different, and that it would only help us be better researchers, it would help us gather the right kind of data, and that when we pulled together these different individuals, that we are looking at the project from different lenses, but ultimately, at the end, it's to bring the love of literacy to Alabama. So as we close today's program, we definitely want you to have a takeaway. And as future researchers that are in the room, or those of you who are actively participating in a research project today, we highly encourage you to look at those 3 components. And that is, who are your partnerships, and what quality relationships are you building so that everyone comes to the table with the same mission, vision, goals, and helping to answer those research questions. Secondly, what are the procedures and how are they outlined so that everyone involved understands what is the end result here? What are we looking for? And that it doesn't skew your results because someone understood it this way and someone else understood it another way, but by being consistent and detailed in your procedures. And lastly, the practices. What are you all as an organization? You've heard of 4 organizations in this collaborative research project, but we're also become a research organization when we all come together. And so what are our practices going to be? And so we don't have those squirrel moments where you go off on something and veer off on something that's not directly tied to the research project. Those are our different takeaways for today's presentation, and we highly encourage all of you to just step back and reevaluate your research project before you go out in the field, and make sure that you do have those partnerships, those procedures, and those practices in line so that at the end you don't have the wish we shoulda, woulda, coulda. Now, I will also highlight that when you do those different practices, procedures, and partnerships, you also find opportunities for future research. And just as Paige mentioned, we do say, oh, we could do this and we could do this. And by staying aligned to those research questions, you almost put some things in a think about it tank. And you can go back to those think about it tanks for future research, because every project has a way of just morphing itself into the next round of research. You establish new partners. You then talk through new procedures and what are new research questions that we can actually put out there in the field to continue to grow what you are interested in learning. At this time, we might take a few questions or comments from the audience. Did you all have anything that sparked your interest, that you wanted to know more? Not yet. Monica, I know you're still on the line. If there anything that you would like to add that maybe that we did not have in our PowerPoint.
I just want to say thanks to everybody for your attention to this, for your support for Short the Squirrel, and for bringing literacy to Alabama. We always joke and say we want to make sure that those people that are reading our prescriptions in the nursing home get us the right medication. And reading is the way to get to that point. But in all seriousness, this is a big issue. It's an economic issue for our state, and it's something that can only go up from where we are now, and it can only increase the value of our communities in so many ways. That's from right. What happens within our homes, what happens within our relationships in communities. It can positively affect crime, and it can deliver economic growth. And so with that, here's the real star of the show in the room with you.
Well, Miss Julie, look at here. Hi, Short. So, where did you find Short today?
He was in a classroom trying to study.
Oh, Short, are you doing research these days? Oh, I'm excited to hear that. We were just talking about research.
And you.
And you. So do you want to go around and give all of these future researchers a big high five and encourage them to let waiting time be research time? How about that? Can I hold these for you? All right, Short, thanks. So may I introduce you to Alabama's literacy mascot, Short the Squirrel.
Sorry, you got people on both sides. Sometimes Short can't see very well.
You can't decide, can you, Short? A lot of people to know today.
Watch his tail. That tail has taken out many a kid.
Oh, Short, you're on television. Do you want to wave to the camera?
Thank you for joining us today.
We encourage you to follow our social media, Short the Squirrel, and also as you launch into your community spaces, please stay in touch, because we would love to bring literacy to your community, bring the booklets that are all grant funded to spaces in your community. If you have some ideas based on your field of study where we can plug in with Short the Squirrel, we will be here for a little while longer, and we'd love to hear your ideas, suggestions, and thoughts, because you never know, you will be pulled in on that collaborative team and research. That certainly will look good on your resume, that you're a part of a research team at the university level.
Trojans Talk Research is a monthly spotlight on the research interests of choice faculty presented by Troy University's Office of Sponsored Programs.
Hello and welcome to this edition of Trojan Talk. I'm Paige Ray. Joining us today is Monica Anderson-Young and Dr. Dee Bennett. They are here to talk about an upcoming celebrity called Short the Squirrel. So you guys, thank you so much for being here.
Well, thanks for having us.
Absolutely, we're happy to be here.
Of course. So I want to go really in depth with this because this is a really awesome program and initiative you guys got going here. So first of all, tell us about the star of this, which is Short.
Yes.
So Short the Squirrel is actually a 6-foot mascot who travels throughout the state celebrating literacy and has actually been named Alabama's literacy mascot by Governor Ivey.
Oh my goodness. And so Short is not short.
Short is
Short is
not
tall.
short. Short is very big
And he has a very big mission.
and
So
a
tell-
very big following.
Yes. Okay, so tell us how Short came to be, and then we'll get into his mission. But where did Short come from?
Well, it started with my oldest daughter, Hannah McRae, was an assistant DA in Mobile. And she was fresh out of law school, and she was coming home at night going, Mom, you wouldn't believe the number of kids in the courtroom. It was right before COVID hit. And she said, you know, it's not typically a demographic who packs a backpack to be there all day. In fact, most people don't know you can't have electronics in the courtroom. So those children would come in and sit for hours without anything to do. And you can imagine what that was like. And so she just said, I feel so bad for them. They're just coming in there and they're just literally idle. And I said, well, what if we gave them some activity sheets to do? She's like, church or a restaurant? And I'm like, absolutely. We could do that. We could have like short little activity sheets, give them this and Ziploc bag of crayons, and they'd have something to do. And she's like, Mom, you know, we don't have time to do that. And I was like, well, I've got time to do that. And at the same time, we had moved back to Alabama after being away for 30 years.
Oh, wow.
And I got to come up to Troy and came and stayed in Dee's tailgate house. We hadn't seen each other in
quite
30
some time.
years, probably. It had been a long time because we were really, when we were gone, we were really gone. And she's like, well, tell me about your job. And I'm like, I have the best job in the world, but let me tell you about this. And I told her the story of this. And you know, there's no data about how many children are in the courtroom. Of course, there's data about how many are testifying or victims or in custody cases or foster care. There's data wrapped around that, but there's no data about the children who are coming in with family members to sit through cases, to listen, to support family members, or simply to go to probate court or to do things. We don't have numbers of how many children are coming into our courtrooms. And so we saw a place where we could provide materials that could foster reading, keep them entertained, we call it edutainment, and demystify what they were seeing in the court system.
That is awesome. And so now it's grown from just the
Oh,
court
gosh.
system
Yes.
all
yes.
over the place.
It has, and we stay true to our mission by reminding ourselves as we are producing booklets that it is ultimately waiting time is reading time. So every topic of literacy kits that we actually produce with Short has that theme. So in the doctor's office, Short gets sick. In the banks or in car dealerships, there's Short's money tree. We are actually working on one right now that could be used in multiple spaces in the community. Short tours the town, and that's in partnership with the Alabama Power Foundation.
Yeah, we say it's our origin story. You know how Yellowstone does, where they've got the origin stories? Well, Short Tours the Town is our origin story because it's all the places Short can go in a community where a child could go and be waiting for his or her adult to do business.
So you are really trying to get Short to meet these children wherever they are, it sounds
Absolutely.
like.
Absolutely.
Yes.
And we like to think of literacy as a three-legged stool, if you will. The first leg, of course, is home. And so if things go the way they're supposed to go, a love of reading has been fostered at home. When that doesn't happen, the second leg of the stool, which is school, the teachers, the educators have to really patch in what hasn't happened at home and get them ready. Well, that can take up to third grade to get a child up to speed where they could have been if it had been fostered at home. Now, this is just the normal child, not somebody who needs some extra help. This is just like a regular child coming through the system. Well, we're the third leg, and that's the community. So, you know, you hear of community book drives, amazing. Donations to school, amazing. But what we're trying to do is we're trying to say community businesses and community partners, community stakeholders, you can take a literacy kit and put it where a child could be waiting in the community. And then that child comes in because they've seen Short and they've fallen in love with this giant squirrel who's come to their school, where we've made them aware of Short. And they know exactly who Short is, so they see it and they want to immediately grab it because they love Short.
They do. His disposition, his temperament, that big smile is just so inviting to a young reader, and it gives that instant association of he's my friend.
Absolutely. And, you know, kind of going back to what you were saying about getting the community involved, you've heard the old saying, I suppose it takes a village to raise a child. I feel like this is the epitome of that, as in everyone has a part to play in bringing up the next generation of readers.
Absolutely.
And that's really awesome. And going back to what you were saying with his sunny disposition and all, they get to meet Short. So tell me about where Short goes and what he's doing when he's interacting with these kids.
Well, before I'm going to jump in on this,
Please.
because we get invited to go to a lot of places. We get invited for Short to show up to a lot of community events, which are great, a lot of different things. But we've been very true to our mission. For Short to appear, it has to have a reading focus. And so it has to have something to do with either one of our literacy kits and a topical area that we are demystifying, or it has to do with reading. So.
And I would say our most popular requests are in schools, and our educators are working hard to bring back some enthusiasm to being back at school, and some encouragement for young readers to love reading and have that achievement growth. And so I would say that's definitely our most popular request, is to do a school story time assembly or classroom pop-ins to visit. We've even had Short visit schools for a readathon, to kick off Family Literacy Night. Those have been some really interesting adventures that he has taken. We are working with a community, and you'll have to wait, we'll come back and share the final product, but we're working with a community where Short will actually appear in all of those spaces we were just describing, and taking a tour of the town with the local mayor. And so that's really going to be a new adventure for us too. We've not done that with Short yet. And I think you need to tell about our most favorite story ever when we did the community book fair.
What we recognized was that there is a lot of opportunity with the book fair, and we were invited to Uniontown, where they were having a book fair in their parking lot. All the books were free. And they did this during COVID because nobody could travel, and it wasn't typically a demographic that was heading off to Disney World anyway. And so we get there, and this little fella spots Short. And he comes running down the parking lot, barreling towards Short. He's got two different slippers on, with a policeman and a fireman. We're like, look at those cute shoes. And he comes running, and bam, he hits Short in the belly so hard that we thought Short was going down. Going down in the book fair in the parking lot. And so he runs, and he grabs him, and he says, Short the squirrel, I've been reading every night just like you told me to.
Oh.
Well, he had watched the birthday video, our very first virtual birthday video that you guys helped us with. And he said, his mom said, he's been watching it every night. And we were trying to take his picture, and he wouldn't look at us. And so we have this picture of him looking up at Short.
Adoringly looking.
Such adoration.
Oh.
And then we looked at each other and we went,
That's it.
that's it. That's why we're doing what we're doing.
That is so sweet.
And it's the power of that message. So if I take you back to how I started this story, which is the book fair, that's the subject of Short's Money Tree, which is sponsored by Alabama Securities Commission. And we delivered it to 40% of Alabama's second graders during April, which is Financial Literacy Month. Because at that point, when kids come in with that wish list and they see all the bright, shiny new things, and they're so excited, and we love a book fair. We love a book fair. But for a lot of kids, that's when literacy becomes the have and the have not. And so what we're really trying to do when we go into schools is we try to make it where everybody wants to read, where they get that message. Dee always likes to tell your Smokey and the Bear.
So in our research, we're finding that mascots resonate a message. And it may be your sports team, but it may be another message. And we know that Short says, waiting time is reading time. Reading can be your superpower. And those are his messages. And so as we were doing our research and reading about what the importance of mascot message can be to young readers, I looked at Monica and I said, I still do not play with matches because Smokey the Bear told me not to.
Wow.
And I just think that that helps us stay true to the brand and true to the message. And yet to realize that anywhere Short goes, he is speaking without speaking, but he's speaking volumes about what can be your superpower too, and that is reading.
And that's reading, which is the basis for critical thinking. It's a lot of people are like, oh, that's so great, that's such a feel-good thing, that's so sweet that you do this. And I'm like, man, reading is an economics principle. And our state, sadly, is at the bottom of the heap of all of our states. And when we think about how can we improve the economic standpoint of our state, of Alabama, which is such a beautiful place to live, I think we all know. I mean, it's why we came back. We couldn't get back fast enough. We came back as fast as we could. But what makes this state special won't be sustained if we don't develop our readers. Because as you look ahead to a knowledge-based economy, our kids are not going to be ready for it if they aren't reading at a better level. And we've almost, can I say this? We've almost tested the love of reading out of them. And we've made it such a chore that we've taken away what the joy is. And if you spark that joy and you find that joy, then you develop a reader.
And it's, you know, I love how you said a lot of people go, oh, this is so sweet, it's wonderful, because it is. I mean, it truly is sweet and wonderful, but Short also carries a very serious message and a very serious prediction of what could be if the community doesn't take action. So I'd like to go back to that part of maybe somebody at home owns a car dealership, or, you know, somewhere that they see a lot of kids come. What do they need to do? How do they get up with you to get those materials?
Well, they can visit our website, and how to contact us is on that for sure. What's great about us is talk about how, like, our grants, how we're funded.
Right, and so that's another special avenue. As we grew the program, we did not want there to be a financial barrier between an organization getting those materials. And so all of our materials are grant funded, which allows us in many spaces to gift the materials. And when we say materials, I do want to emphasize it's a pre-packaged literacy kit. It has an interactive booklet similar to what a highlights magazine or a weekly reader would be. So it is consumable, and a child can actually interact with that. It has crayons in there, a sticker, and then a one-pager, which again relates to that space. So in the court booklet, the one-pager is actually a steno machine, so the child practices being the court reporter. In the one for the doctor's office, it is Short was scared about a vaccination, then he was proud he got his vaccination. And it has a little checklist where the child can actually ask the doctor, are they current on their vaccines? And so it's that one-page interactive extra in each of the kits. And because they're pre-packaged, if you don't finish it there at the waiting space, you get to take it with you as a young reader. And that allows us to send them in what we call literacy sets, which is usually a set of 50, to a waiting space of choice. And they contact us, different agencies. We have a great relationship with the Child Advocacy Center, a great relationship with our district attorneys across the state. We're building relationships with local banks for the Money Tree booklet, and then we just know the sky is the limit when it comes to Tours the Town, because lots of spaces can use that literacy kit.
Well, you guys, we're out of time, but this is so awesome. I wish that Short had been around, you know, when I was little. I think I would have fallen in love with Short, and I know so many kids are falling in love. We hope that we're going to send some people your way with this interview. We appreciate you so much for being here.
Well, thank you.
Thanks for having us.
This has been great.
Of course. And thank you for joining us on this edition of Trojan Talk.